Well, you've just tuned in for a new episode of the GP View. It's like the View, but with GPUs and GPU View.
Can I be Whoopi?
You can be Whoopi.
I can be Whoopi. Awesome.
We don't have Krista, so you have to be Whoopi.
Okay, I'm Whoopi.
So
I'm mad about something. I don't know what, but I'm mad.
Let the talking of all of us commence. Yeah. It's going to be great.
I'm so proud that I don't know any of the other people on the View to select one to be.
Wait, I think Rosie O'Donnell's one of them.
Is he?
I think so. Maybe. I don't know. That's probably wrong. I don't know what's happening.
If you make him Rosie, that's wrong.
Well, for those of you that are not in the know, this is Ed from Sapphire.
Hi.
And we've recently taken a look at some of the Sapphire Pulse graphics cards, the 570 and the 580, and he's also brought the Nitro Plus. And there's a ton of, like, if you missed it, there's a Q&A on the forum. People ask questions. Those are the attentive ones. For somebody that doesn't understand, explain to us Sapphire's product lineup.
Okay, so what we've got is essentially two different products for the gaming community. The high-end product is the Nitro Plus series. This is the premium. The way I like to explain this, let's get to an explanation what the difference is between Pulse and Nitro Plus. Is probably the easiest way to do this. If you're a car person, think of the Ford Taurus. Ford Taurus, great car, well-made, well-constructed. But there was another model, the Mercury Sable. Mercury Sable was, for all practical purposes, the same car. It was just, it had the extras. It had the Bacos, if you will, were added to it. And that's Nitro Plus versus Pulse. The Pulse is a well-made, solid, low-cost card. It's meant to be reasonably priced, but give you a great gaming experience. Nitro Plus takes that and adds to it. Now, as far as raw performance goes, it's faster. It's not ridiculously or redonkulously faster, but it's faster. But it adds to the features. It's got a bigger heatsink, which makes it a little quieter, a little cooler. It's got RGB cooling. It's got a higher overclock out of the gate. It's got a more robust energy delivery system. So at the end of the day, we offered you your choice. Do you just need good, solid gaming at a reasonable price, or do you want the Bacos? And most people probably won't get the Bacos. They don't remember the Bacos commercials.
It was a commercial where you added bacon bits to
and it was better.
And it made it better. So this is the card with bacon bits. This is the card without bacon bits.
And look at the two cards. You can see they're not that different. Okay, you can see they both got, well, I'll let you do it because you can do it without bumping a mic.
The Nitro Plus, you've got a huge graphics card. You've got multiple power connectors. You get the 4-pin and the 6-pin.
And this is the same card, by the way. These are both 474 gigs.
This is quite a bit heavier. It's got four heat pipes, looks like.
Yes.
And
a much denser heat fin array.
Yeah, it's a lot heavier, to be honest. And then this is the
Pulse.
It's got four. It's got
still four heat pipes, but they're smaller.
And they're all coming off the bottom of the card, so they're all routed here. Here we've got two off the top, two off the bottom.
Right.
So, and this card is quite a bit lighter. What's the difference in the clock? Is about 50 megahertz.
I think it's actually even a little more than that. This is close to the stock speed that is available. Yeah, it is about 50 megahertz. You're right. Now that I think about that's right. It's about 50 megahertz off the stock speed.
So overall, I mean, they're both. I've taken an in-depth look at this point of the Pulse cards, and I was really impressed with the build quality on the Pulse cards because I know, off the record, on the record, that the margins really are pretty razor thin on.
Oh, ridiculously compared to other products. Yeah. I get a kick out of it. We go to events, and people are like, well, this company sent 23 mice. Why did you send 2 video cards? Because those 23 mice that sell for $60 a piece in the store cost them about $4 to produce.
Can confirm.
Okay, no. Well, yeah, you can. You understand this. You understand this. The margins in so many other products are so much higher. And with video cards, they're actually really tight, ridiculously tight. So we can't do that. You've got to, when you design a video card, people always ask me, what do you shoot for? Once we know what the chip is, the first concern is, what's our target price point? Because we've got to build everything then around that. What can we deliver? How much can we give you and stay within a margin that's reasonable for us as a company and hit the price point we want to hit?
Well, I've noticed that probably not our audience. I think our audience is probably one of the more technical audiences on YouTube. But I think that AMD is getting on board with the right kind of marketing with this, because I've seen from Sapphire and from AMD in general that they're more like, okay, 570, good 1080p gaming experience, 580, great 1080p, good 1440p gaming experience. And that's pretty much the end of the story for how they're marketing it.
No, for mainstream gaming, when the 400 series came out, I'm really excited about this. I'm a tech enthusiast, but I'm a tech realist. And most of us have mortgages and kids and wives, maybe ex-wives, car payments, house payments. And to have to throw $400 or $500 at a video card to get a great gaming experience is just, it's beyond the reach.
Yeah. Well, even with like the 400 series cards, really the landscape with graphics cards in general has changed a lot since the 9 series cards from NVIDIA, because I thought that like the 970, for example, when it first debuted, was not completely unreasonably priced, but then the 1070 was significantly higher, and it's like, this isn't really a good situation for gamers, because there's not really a lot of competition in the market. But for 1080p and 1440p gaming, I think these are the new value proposition. And it's weird though, because these are like the refresh of the 400 series cards.
Refresh, remember that. Refresh, that's the correct term. It shows how good the architecture is.
Yeah.
It shows the power that's in the architecture. I'll take it a little bit beyond 1080, though, with the 570. That particular 570, by the way, came out of my demo rig. And that's been running 2560 by 1080.
Oh, wow.
And I've been able to peg pretty much everything at high detail level at the 75 hertz refresh rate of the monitor.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So ultra-wide gaming 1080p with that is incredible. And you can get decent 1080p ultra-wide monitors for $200.
Yeah. We've got the microboard FreeSync over there. I didn't think to test it with the 570, but I did test it with the 580, and I was super impressed that it was able to maintain the frame rates on that particular one. Will go up to, I think, 90 hertz. And
is that a 3440 by 1440, or is that a 2560 by 1080?
Well, that one is a 3560 by 1440, but I was running it at 2560 by 1080.
Okay.
To get the best frame rate.
The 580 can do 3440 by 1440, but that's really beginning to stretch its legs.
Yeah. It in like Overwatch, it was okay, but in more unoptimized games, not so much.
In Overwatch, seriously, Overwatch. A hamster on a wheel can run Overwatch. Come on. CSGO, a hamster on a wheel can run. Okay, I get a kick out of that. You get these guys that are the competitive gamers. They like Overwatch, they like League of Legends, they like CSGO, they like Dota. And these guys are like, we need to buy these super high-end monitors and these amazing high-end video cards. Dude, you can run 4K at 100 frames per second on that, on bubble gum, okay? These games don't require this immense amount of horsepower. I think people tend to overbuy video cards. They tend to buy more than they need, because we've got you and I talked about this a little bit. The term enthusiast has been really destroyed in the last decade in the PC world. It's not about enthusiasm anymore. It's about money. Yeah. How much money can you throw at it? I watch reviewers. They get a $700 video card and a 4K monitor, and they sound like they are amazed at the incredible experience they're getting. Dude, if I spent that much money on that crap, it better not only game amazing, it better make me lunch. It's crazy what we've come with expectations. They get so unrealistic. Don't get me wrong, 1080 is a great card. It's a great card. But seriously, unless you're trying to push 4K gaming, is there a reason that there's an advantage to it?
The thing that we're always trying to push with our audience is like there's a curve on return on investment.
Right.
And so like in the middle of the curve is where you get the best value per dollar. And at the upper end of the curve, like with the 1080, you've paid significantly more for better, yeah, but not linearly better.
Well, it's not just the curve and the performance. It's the curve in what they need. So let's just go off the curve right now. Let's talk about monitors for a minute, buying a monitor. I'm amazed at how broke the consumer public is when it comes to understanding how monitors work.
They run at 60 hertz most of the time.
Okay, well, they think that they have to have 144 hertz to be a great gaming experience. Well, that's a myth. Okay, anything past about 75 doesn't really help unless you're a first-person shooter competitive gamer. Other than that, it's just there's no real advantage to it. In fact, every study I've seen says the same thing. From 60 to 75 hertz, there's a noticeable smoothing of the entire computing experience. From 75 to 100 hertz, the experience is still improved, but less drastically by a pretty significant margin. From 100 to 144, it's practically impossible to tell the difference in the overall computing experience. It just isn't there. So people first think they've got to buy 144 hertz monitors. Well, if you're not a competitive first-person shooter gamer, don't waste your money.
Yeah.
You didn't gain anything. Then we get wrapped up in TN versus IPS versus VA versus, you know what? Get what looks good to you. Who cares?
Yeah.
Okay. Finally, pixel density. I love this argument. So a big movement in ultra-wide or 34-inch displays, many of them have higher refresh rates, but they're going 2560 by 1080. You tell an enthusiast, 34-inch monitor, 2560 by 1080. Oh my God, I'll see pixels everywhere. Oh my God, I'll go blind. It'll be so terrible. It'll be so ugly. They forgot to take into account pixel density and size of monitor and resolution are not the only factors. Do you remember a term coined by Apple called Retina? Most people don't understand what Retina is. They think it's hardware. It wasn't. Retina is a mathematical formula that says at this distance and this pixel density, it is physically impossible for a person with perfect vision to see a pixel. Physically impossible to see. That means the distance you sit from the monitor is just as important as the pixel density. But nobody talks about that. I guess they all assume that we're going to sit 24 inches from the monitor. And I don't know, maybe if you live in your mama's basement, you got that little shelf and you got to be creamed in there to...
You're saying there's a problem with my monitor wall?
It's all of this comes together, and this creates a lot of the angst and confusion for the mainstream gamer when they go to buy hardware. They don't understand. They've been told, well, you got to get a 4K monitor. No, you don't. Okay, 1080p is great for gaming. It's an amazing gaming experience. 2560 by 1080 is, in my opinion, even better for gaming experience. You got to have these high-end video cards. No, you don't. Mainstream video cards are more than capable of giving an amazing gaming experience. We need sites like yours and others to help the mainstream begin to understand that the enthusiast in is exactly that. That's the extreme. The majority of us fit in a different group altogether. And suddenly I think we'd find a lot more PC gamers. It's hard to convince somebody when they can buy a $400 game box that, by the way, is specifically designed just to play games. It's hard to convince them when the enthusiast community is telling them they got to spend $1,500 to get a gaming PC.
So I think we have a good opportunity here to organically incorporate some questions.
I get off topic. I'm very sorry. I ramble.
So you mentioned a $400 gaming PC.
Right.
So a lot of people have asked in the submitted questions. We asked our audience, hey, what are some questions you want to see? We advocate a lot. If you're new to gaming or you're broke or whatever, go find an old Dell that's in surplus and do a little refurb and put a nice video card in there, and you've got as good or better as a console kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So a lot of people are asking, what about half-height cards? What about single-slot cards, low-power cards? What should I look for minimally there in terms of where do I start? What card do I need?
When you're starting with the older cards, or the older builds, this is something Wendell and I have been talking about. Many of the newer cards have trouble with older motherboards because of the BIOS, and I'm not sure, maybe it's a mechanical thing as well. Maybe it's the way the PCI slot is developed. I'm not that big of a gearhead. That's your job.
We've been doing testing.
But there's an issue there. So you're probably going to be better off to go to an older card. Of choice, the 380 or the 7850 both come to mind. The 7850 was one of the most underrated cards of its generation.
Or 7970, because you can get those for a bunch of nothing.
I'd still get a 7850. For 1080p, it's less power, it's cooler, it's going to be easier to fit in that build. Finding a half-height card becomes a complete nightmare because you have to have a certain level of cooling on any card of any kind of real performance. There's just got to be a certain level of cooling. That's why you don't see half-height cards hardly anymore. They're really rare, and when they exist, they're ultra low end.
Yeah.
So it would be cool to get the half-height card, but that's not going to work. Now, what you might want to consider with the Dell is maybe make that a project for a first-time build. Maybe pull the motherboard out of the case and put it in another case. I mean, you can pick up a cheap case for $20.
The thing that we found in using some newer cards in older machines is that the older machine has to have good UEFI support. So all the AMD cards are basically, you know, what's called modern architecture. A lot of them don't support booting BIOS mode
At all, yeah.
So the first gen systems, UEFI support's not really there. So the systems that I've tested that it works with, as long as you've got an up-to-date UEFI, you've got to update the UEFI before you install the card, is like the Dell 9020 and newer. So we're talking Ivy Bridge. The Sandy Bridge systems, Sandy Bridge and older, these cards are not really going to work. Curiously, the 550 apparently works sometimes. So if you get validation or whatever, maybe that's okay. But if you've got an older system, Ivy Bridge or newer for one of the OEMs, but a custom build Sandy Bridge is fine.
Yeah, but like I said, if you're going to go this route, look for the older cards too. As long as you're saving money, save the money.
Yeah.
If you don't want to invest, if you're building your first gaming PC, that's a scary thing for some people. That's a pretty significant investment. Because most of these guys, I call it the water cooler effect. Back in the Skyrim days, you'd be hanging around the water cooler and all your buddies are talking about Skyrim, and suddenly you're like, I want to try that. Well, invest in $500, $600, $700 in a PC. That's scary. When you got the mortgage and you got the wife, and you got, especially the wife, dude. Honey, I'm spending this to play a game. Divorce court follows, and you've lost a lot more money.
If you're just tuning in, you're watching the GP View.
And it's a scary proposition. But going the used route, this was Linus does this. You do this some. I like the junkyard war approach to building your first PC. I think that's a good idea to building your first PC because it lets you build a reasonably powerful system at a reasonable budget.
Yeah, that was what my first machine was. It was definitely made from cast-offs and garbage.
Yeah. My first PC was a 286 that was literally just pieced together. Duct tape was involved. A lot of duct tape was involved. And then after that, I just built my own. So,
what else? Will we ever see anything like the R9 295X2?
Again, we're coming on future products. I'm not a big fan. I'm personally not a big fan of dual GPU cards. Multi-card solutions are historically not stable. And they just introduce more problems and more problems and more problems. And putting it on the same chip or on the same board didn't fix it.
Would you say that in general the industry is moving away from multi-GPU solutions in general for gaming?
Well, I would think that's a pretty safe assumption. We've already seen NVIDIA pretty much drop multi-GPU solution for the mid-range and low end. AMD still got support there. But when you look at the mid-range and low end, well, anything at 1080p, a multi-card solution doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Anything at 1440, a multi-card solution doesn't make any sense. A $250 video card can throw 1440 around pretty well. It doesn't make any sense. We're beginning to see cards that can do 4K at single card capabilities. They're just beginning to approach it, but they're beginning to do it. And then you're back to 4K isn't the most practical choice for a gaming resolution. I mean, 4K, let's face it, when you and I, when the three of us were growing up, remember, our mothers told us not to look at porn because of what we would do when we go blind, right? Well, mothers, you were wrong. That's not what makes a man blind. Doing a spreadsheet on a 4K monitor is how a man goes blind. Have you tried? If you don't upscale the video if you don't upscale everything ridiculously, it's just impossible to see.
And this is why we import 40-inch monitors from Korea.
Exactly. You've got to get up to that huge resolution before it makes any difference.
Yeah.
So here's another question that probably going to be a plead the fifth, which is fine. Do you have an official stance on flashing the 400 series with the 500 series firmware?
Official stance, you void the warranty of your card if you do this.
Unofficial?
Unofficial stance, I think it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And let me explain why. The power delivery system of the 500 series is completely different from the 400 series. It's much more robust because the chip actually has a higher power demand to be able to maintain the higher speeds. So the power delivery system of the board is much more robust. Everything about the board is built around that more robust power delivery system. So you take the BIOS from a robust power delivery, you take the heart out of a V12 Jaguar and you stick it in a Pinto, and then think the Pinto is going to run as fast. Now, that analogy, by the way, is ridiculously extreme. But you get the point. It's in no way was the 400 series board designed for those kind of performance levels.
So conversely, are you aware of other 400 series card producers that are only doing that with their rebadge?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of.
That might be
I'm not saying that that's not possible. I'm saying I'm not aware of anybody doing that, and if they were, shame on them.
The audience is going to tell us because
yeah, somebody out there is going to go, well, we have found for a fact that. Well, I can tell you, Sapphire didn't.
Well, I had seen some the cooler is the cooler assembly from Sapphire for these. Is it the same, similar, upgraded from the 400 series, or what are the particulars?
The Pulse is very similar to the 400 series. But the Pulse is also a lower power solution. It's closer to the 400 series solution in power draw. The Nitro Plus is a completely redesigned cooler solution. It's much more robust. We have direct connection to this cooler for all the VRM, for the memory. All of it is through the single big cooler.
Okay, but the main point of 150 watts or 180 watts or whatever is, can the heatsink dissipate that much heat? Because that's the back of the envelope. Because if the heatsink can't dissipate that much heat, then the card is going to have heat production issues. It's got a throttle to reduce the heat production, and you're going to lose performance.
Right. We designed the heat sinks around the temperature that we target. In the case of the Pulses, everything is targeted to 75C, which means as long as it stays at its speeds that's listed with the clock profiles we've provided, 75C should be a fairly quiet operation, and it should stabilize at the temperature point.
Yeah, well,
that's the goal.
I've got a reference 480, and it sounds like a vacuum cleaner, and these did not approach anywhere near that. So
no, these are actually very quiet. The Nitro Plus are even quieter. That's what amazed me, is we actually got these things down to practically silent. I did a video on YouTube. I took my cell phone camera, and I had that thing this far from the video card, and it had been doing Metro. We're running the Metro benchmark for about 2.5 hours. And so it's up to heat at this point, right? That fan's cranking away. You couldn't hear it. You could hear the cars outside over this. And we're really, really happy with the way these cooling solutions have turned out. We had some missteps with the 400. We acknowledged them. We were a little louder than we wanted to be with the 400. We fixed it with the 500.
Cool. So somebody here asked, they prefer 3-fan cooling because it is quieter. So would you say that compared to the old 3 fans, this is still better in terms of how loud it is?
I would say the Nitro Plus is pretty comparable to most 3-fan coolers. It's a really robust heat sink. The only cooler I would call into question with that was the Tri-X Fury that we had. But what made the Tri-X Fury so special was it had that small PCB. But the cooler was a full-length 3-fan cooler. So the last fan was blowing air straight through the cooler. That makes it very efficient at getting heat off of it. So it made it very quiet. That was, in my opinion, the best cooler we ever made. I thought that was incredible. In fact, a non-tech actually said it was the quietest cooler they had ever seen. It was quieter than NVIDIA's offerings at idle. Under load, it was quieter. That cooler was amazing. It was incredible. These I'm just as proud of. When you realize how small the card is really at the end of the day, that it's still this quiet is impressive. I'm really proud of what we achieved.
Yeah, these cards being this size are also good candidates for upgrade systems because a lot of older systems don't support graphics cards much longer than the Nitro Plus.
Right.
And so having the extra using the extra area just for a heatsink is good, but only if your case is going to support that full-length cooler. And let's face it, the medium end machines that you might be upgrading are not going to have that.
No, this is about as big as you're going to get. Next.
Someone was asking, did you differentiate in terms of warranty if the cards are being used in a VM? I can't imagine that would matter.
Not that I'm aware of.
I think that what is it a fair statement to say that the warranty holds up as long as you don't physically do horrible things to the card?
As long as the card has not been physically changed, the warranty holds up. Now we get flack for that, and I'm gonna fix the flack now, okay? Because I want you guys get it. Most people don't. So you get a video card in, and you want to take off the cooler and you want to put on a water cooling solution. You're an old school modder enthusiast. You understand the minute you do that, you voided the warranty. Most of the newer people today don't get it. They're like, well, why does that void the warranty? The reason why is I don't know your level of expertise. I don't know. If I knew you were doing it, you personally were doing it, as a company, I would warranty you because I know you know what you're doing.
But you're rolling the dice on that every
You
time.
roll your dice every time. and so how do you do this? Do you err to the side of caution or do you err to the side of, oh my God, we're going to have to warranty 1,000 video cards? And companies err to the side of caution. Now, a lot of them use wording that's a wink and a poke that if it comes back and it's not physically damaged, it's okay. The official response is, if you physically modify this card, your warranty is void.
And flashing the BIOS counts as a physical modification.
It does count as a physical modification, unless we told you to flash the BIOS. And no, we have never told anyone to flash a 480 to a 580. Ever.
Extra performance. There's probably some OEM out there somewhere.
It's Bacos.
Well, I mean, there are people that are sitting at home that are like, I mean, I personally know people that, like they'll have the NVIDIA 970 and they're like, I'm going to sell my 970 and buy a 1070. But this is not really any different than the 290 to the 390X. I mean, from the 290X to the 390X, they improved the memory speed. But for the people that had a 290X, it doesn't make sense to throw out your 290X and buy a 390X.
It does not make any sense to do that.
So these cards are for people. I think in the review video I said it was like like the R7 series or older. Like if you've got a graphics card that's 2.5, 3 years old or more, these are a great upgrade.
If you've got a 380 or less in the performance range, in my opinion, these are worthy upgrades. Anything above that, 290X is still faster than the 570 and just not that far behind the 580. 390X, that ups it a notch, but still stays in the range.
Well, now the 290 and the 390X, let's be fair, are space heaters compared to this thing.
Well, yes, okay. If you well, not the Sapphire ones.
Well, because
we had those big triple fan, awesome coolers.
It's still producing the heat. It's just better at carrying the heat away.
Well, the heat gets away before it's produced. Okay, it gets away before it's produced. That's the point. But yeah, if you've got a 380, 370, 280, 270, any of the 7000 series, these are worthy upgrades. These are things that you really want to consider moving to, especially if you're not trying to push. You don't want to push 4K. You're not going to try for 1440p at 144 hertz on ultra detail settings in CSGO. Okay, which you can still do probably, but it's.
Don't pro CSGO players play with like textures turned
they turn
off?
the details off.
Every pro player I know plays at 1080p, turns off everything. And just plays at super as fast as GPU or as editing. You'll probably leave that in. As fast of frames per second as humanly possible. That's what they do. And that's why it's always funny to me. I see some guy, I'm going to play CSGO and I'm going to play at 1440p and I want ultra detail levels at 144. What do I need to buy? Clue.
Well, you have to think also that at 4K, smaller targets.
Yeah.
Well, at 4K, it's harder to see.
Yeah.
It's well, even at 1080p, the refresh rate becomes kind of silly. All right. So the idea of the higher refresh rate is there's more opportunity for you to see the enemy quickly and be able to get that first shot in. But remember, as you increase the frame rate, you're also increasing the speed at which everything is taking place. The average human response time is what, 9 millisecond?
I think it's a lot more than that.
It's a really ridiculously high number, which means maybe if you saw him first, you're going to get the shot, but the extra frame rates at a certain point just don't help.
Yeah.
You can't respond quick enough.
I really do like AMD for the value proposition that they're in, just because, you know, when the 10 series cards from NVIDIA debuted, I thought they were, you know, I thought the price was kind of high, especially even just compared with NVIDIA's previous generation. And when the 400 series cards launched, they were definitely rough around the edges in terms of the software and that kind of thing. But, you know, like the 290X, if you look at the 290X to the 390X, how much performance improvement there was just based on software updates.
Right.
And you look at the 400 series cards with the drivers at launch compared to the 500 series cards with the drivers at the 500 series launch, which also happen to be compatible with 400 series cards. You're talking about except for the 550.
No, there were some actual issues with the initial driver. AMD was really good about getting the initial driver out. It actually wasn't a chip issue; it's a BIOS issue in the PCB. So the driver would look at these PCBs and goes, "What the hell are you?" and say, "There's no card here. There's no card." That got fixed. Luckily, that got fixed. But
not unlike the UEFI problem on older machines.
Exactly. We'll hope that gets fixed soon. I don't know. There's a point of, in the case of hardware companies, as much as we hate to admit it, there is a point of diminishing return for support for older equipment.
Yeah.
There's just a point to where the hardware companies say no. That's the reason it's good that's one of the reasons I'm happy I work for Sapphire. The quality of our products have always been really high. So you can go find a 380 or a 280 or a 290 or 7850, and it's probably still a good card. There's probably nothing wrong with it. Plug it in and go. And that'll work great with that older system that you're getting used. Or an older system you want to just try to upgrade a little bit. I still run dip
your toes in the
exactly
in the pearlescent waters of the PC Master Race.
Exactly. I still run we talked about this. It's like an i7 950 or something, and a 380X at my father-in-law's. That's still my gaming rig up there, and I'm ecstatic with it. 1080p gaming is awesome on it.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people that are running older machines because I probably helped them put it together. Well, and it's fine. It's honestly fine. And at least until Krista's student loans are paid off, she's, you know.
We got to help that poor girl.
She was using a Pentium, wasn't she?
Yeah. It was like
but it played Overwatch, so.
Yeah, it was an overclocked G3458.
We got to help this poor girl. We got to help her. We got to do something to help that. I know you got chips laying around, dude. Help her out.
Well, she's running I think an i5 7600 now.
That's a solid chip. There's nothing wrong with that.
With the 480, with the blower style 480, but it's a 480 and 144 hertz 1080p monitor. She got upgraded recently.
Let me see what we can do about fixing that 480. Let me see what we can do. I got. Because, well, at the very least, I'll get her a 40. It's not a blower.
It's a launch day. Actually, it's funny. I think it's a Sapphire launch day 480. That's just the blower style, like just the repackaged AMD.
Yeah, my launch day 480 is sitting on a shelf. It's kind of like a display. I won't put it in a computer because, well, it's a blower cooler. I wish we could. I really believe. I would really like to see us make a real blower cooler, get serious about the technology, and develop a really cutting-edge heat-sink blower cooler. And I've talked to people about doing that, and the biggest problem is just frankly cost. You're going to you go to do a completely new design like that, and there's a certain minimum level of sale that has to be hit, or it just isn't justified. Yeah. It's expensive.
Yeah, just the tooling alone is like $50,000-$75,000, I'd imagine.
Oh, that's just barely getting started because you're only tooling one thing. Then you got a couple of components that have to be tooled for this.
There's a motor and the shroud. There's plastic bits.
Well, there's the shroud. There's the PCB. There's the heatsink itself.
How are you going to deal with the aluminum? Is it going to be aluminum only or aluminum and copper? You got to have tooling for both.
Yeah, it gets crazy in the end.
You've seen trends come and go.
Yes.
RGB Is it going to keep getting worse? Are we going to get more and more of it? Or was that going to go away? Is that a trend? Is it a fad?
I think it's a fad, but I don't think it's a fad that's going to die soon. And I'm really upset about that. In my day, we didn't need 36 lights.
Well, the Pulse didn't have any RGB, which I found delightful.
That is nice, yeah.
We did that because, again, the Pulse is about budget. It's about keeping the cost down. RGB lighting.
RGB or better fan? RGB, better heatsink.
We get crazy with this. You and I had this discussion. I talked to somebody I know in the peripheral industry, keyboards, mice, and he was explaining to me RGB keyboards have like a 20 to 30% higher failure rate because of lighting than regular lit keyboards, because one color will die.
Yeah, they're using early production process.
So you don't get the response. I like a backlit keyboard. All right, let's just be clear. I'm a gamer. I play in the dark, and I don't touch type. I like a backlit keyboard. So I like that, but I don't like RGB. I don't need 16 million colors. Okay, I don't need a rainbow going across my screen while I'm trying to dodge a wolf in Witcher 3. All right, because it'll be like wolf, wolf, wolf. That's pretty. I'm dead. These companies that have these keyboards that we change lighting when you're about to die. Okay, I'm playing. It's red. I'm dead. I'm dead because it turned red and I looked. It's a fad, but it's a fad that has such a following that it's impossible to see it die. I think RGB has been carried away. I think too much emphasis has been put into making something that a group thinks is cool than making something that's quality. This is why I really like what we did with Pulse. We focused on a simple aesthetic. The entire Nitro and Pulse lineup is based on what I call the little black dress approach. It's a simple, elegant, easy design that will fit anything. It'll fit any build. Short of a white build, it'll just go in. And even then, black and white, it still looks good. They'll just go in, they'll look good, they're clean, they're simple. Even with the RGB lighting, the only thing we did was this right here on the top. That's it. We didn't RGB anything else in the lighting. Because why? It gets gaudy. It just looks awful. Robert Halleck, I think, said it best. He looked at our Nitro card, and his comment on Twitter was, "This is the best looking card to me. I'm so sick of Transformer-looking video cards." And this is one of the things we're focusing on. We're focusing on quality ahead of flash. So, any other questions? I know I saw one that you guys didn't take.
What was it?
Was it the Vega question?
Vapor X.
Oh,
Vapor
okay.
X.
Somebody's asking about this, and you asked about this. Okay, so let me answer the Vapor X one now. You got to go back to when we created Nitro. We had 3 basic models of cards. We had Vapor X, Tri-X, and Dual X. The problem was those weren't actually models of cards. Those were technologies. And we wanted to get away from that. And that's the creation of Nitro and of Pulse, to actually have a product line that makes sense, not the technology line. So Vapor X. So the idea was to use a vapor chamber to increase cooling potential. 2 things have happened over the years. The first is chips require actually less cooling than they used to require. There's just not a need for as robust of cooling anymore. The second thing that happened is
X's.
Yeah, or what was the one from NVIDIA that was like a blast furnace when you ran it?
The 9800 GX2.
Something like that. It was just, oh my God.
I used to have one of those.
I fired one up in the room. I was a reviewer and they'd sent me one, and I fired one up in the room, and I swear to God, I had to turn on the air conditioner and it was -4 outside. That's an exaggeration, folks. And people don't know how to take a joke anymore. I lost my train of thought.
Sorry. Vapor X.
So Vapor X.
Do you even vape?
No, I don't. So what happened with the Vapor X, the second thing that happened was heat pipe technology has become so efficient that it is approaching pure vapor chamber technology. Well, if the difference is only going to be 1 or 2 degrees centigrade under load, but it can be a $15 to $20 price difference, why would you do that? So we've hit the point that we just have not found, we look at it every generation, but we just have not found a reason to bring a vapor chamber in. There's no reason to. The heat pipe technology is capable of doing it and keeping the cost lower.
What else we got?
You guys have been easy so far.
Cards with upgradable VRAM. Will it ever be a thing?
It was.
When? I don't remember that one. Oh,
Trident.
yeah, okay. If you're going to go back to Visa Local Bus.
Yeah,
I mean,
we
come
go
on.
back to Visa. We had, well, actually, yeah, Visa had it. We had all sorts of video cards. They came without RAM.
Yeah.
And we added our own.
Yeah.
You guys are acting like this is new technology. That's not new, dude. That's ancient.
That was true on ISA and the 32-bit ISA that IBM did.
Yeah.
And Visa Local Bus, and there were a few PCI cards that had, but that was when they were doubling up on density.
I was going to say, I don't think there was ever an APG that did it.
AGP.
AGP, I mean. Yeah.
I don't think there was. There might have been.
Well, Trident and Cirrus Logic might have.
No, I think there was a prototype. I was going to say that there was a Voodoo graphics card that had a socketed upgrade.
No.
But that was a prototype.
Well, it would have been a prototype. I had every released Voodoo card. I actually, a fun story for you. Again, this is back in my reviewer days, and I had a couple of really good contacts inside Voodoo. And I get a phone call one day from my contact, and he said, Ed, I just shipped out a box for you. And I'm like, that's awesome. He says, about 15 graphics cards. That's awesome, dude. Yeah, I said, is it my birthday? Did I forget? And he goes, nope, we just got bought by NVIDIA. It's being announced later today. Wow. And I'm like, seriously? He said, dude, here you go. Enjoy it. Awesome. All my friends got free upgrades, by the way. I got free pizza for like a year.
Nice.
But yeah, I've seen all the Voodoo cards. Voodoo was incredible. But Voodoo, and considering NVIDIA bought them, it's amazing to me they haven't learned the lesson that Voodoo taught. Voodoo put all their eggs into proprietary technology baskets. If they didn't have good DirectX support, they had mediocre OpenGL support. They just didn't have good support for anything outside their proprietary technology. And the result was eventually, despite having a huge lead in the market turned on them because the open technologies were better solutions for everyone. NVIDIA has this with PhysX. They have this with G-Sync. NVIDIA is sooner or later going to have to acknowledge that they've got to get, and they started to, their GameWorks, they opened it up recently, didn't they?
A bit, yeah.
Proprietary technology in the PC world is a death knell because the PC world's about choice. Proprietary technology is about removing choice. I think for NVIDIA users, if I was a full-time NVIDIA user, I'd be mad as hell because FreeSync would take a minor driver update to be 100% supported by NVIDIA cards. Minor driver update, and it could be supported. The only reason it's not being supported is they want to push G-Sync.
Well, it's funny you mention that because...
Yeah, you actually did it, didn't you?
Yeah, and it turns out they don't like that at all.
No, it's dumb. Why wouldn't you give your consumers a free choice?
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's going to argue that G-Sync monitors aren't great monitors. They've got a very tight standard. AMD's just getting there with FreeSync. They've got a very tight standard. The module does have some advantages, but there is an increased cost. So you have to decide if it's worth the cost for the advantage.
If my understanding of the situation is correct, the G-Sync implementation on the particular notebook that I'm thinking of was, in fact, FreeSync.
Probably.
But the driver was like, I'm running in this notebook in these circumstances. I'm going to enable notebook G-Sync. But it was actually just the Visa Sync technology for the display, not actually a daughter board.
We see the funny thing is it goes the other way, too. Imagine if NVIDIA opened up G-Sync to AMD cards.
Well, not just to AMD cards, but Korean manufacturers.
All cards, for that matter. What if they opened it up to Intel? What if they made it an open standard? This is the problem with proprietary. And it's funny to me that here's the company that bought the graphics leader of the decade because proprietary technology forced them into a mess they couldn't get out of, and now they're the ones with the proprietary technology.
Yeah. Well, it's, he who has the gold makes the rules.
Yeah. Sooner or later, though, the gold tarnishes and disappears.
We'll look back and see if this was oddly prophetic because AMD is open sourcing all kinds of stuff, not just everything from machine learning to lower level stuff. It's honestly very Very impressive. They're even talking about open sourcing their platform security processor, which is not actually owned by AMD. A lot of people don't realize that, which is going to be more of an uphill battle than most people realize. But that they're actually considering it signals that there are huge political changes inside of AMD, and this could actually be. I mean, it is congruent with what you're saying.
It's a good philosophy. I think it's good for PC gamers to have open standards. So when you go buy something, you don't have to buy a brand.
Yeah.
You don't have to buy a brand of video card to be able to achieve what you want in a game. You buy a game, and then your video card is based on how much you're willing to spend and the horsepower within the price point, not on does this certain feature work or not work.
Makes sense. Yep. Well, if you guys had any questions, you missed your opportunity. You might be hanging around our forum, though, so you might get your chance again. You can ask
we can always come in another time. You're close. You're not that big a deal.
Yeah, that's true. What do you guys think? You can find us in the forum at Level 1 Techs. See you there.
Yeah.
Bye.
So, cameras are off, but seriously, what about Vega? We need to know.
You know what? There is all sorts of cool things I can tell you right now. So let me begin to explain.
You know what's coming, right?
I know everything.
All right, tell us all about it.
I know everything. I know that we had a